The wait is over. The uncertainty has definitely reduced and the road ahead seems a lot clearer than it did till just yesterday. Now ending nearly 11 months of chaos that pushed bilateral ties between India and US to their lowest point in over 2 decades. India and the United States have finally struck a historic trade deal, with Washington agreeing to slash tariffs from a steep 50% to the highest globally. This 50% was the highest globally to now just 18%. Now here's a collection of all the statements that US President Donald Trump made spread over the last 1 year sequentially, starting from before the April 2nd liberalization day tariffs, going all the way, making their way to the 50% tariff mark before the February 2nd deal announcement by the US President.
As you know, Prime Minister Modi was here just recently, and we've always been very good friends. India is one of the highest tariffing nations in the world. You know that. I know. Thank you for shaking your head, but it's brutal. It's brutal. They're very smart, and he's a very smart man and a great friend of mine, actually. And we had very good talks. I think it's going to work out very well between India and our country. India, very, very tough. Very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left, and he's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing for years and years and decades. And it's very hard to sell into India. And they've offered us a deal where basically they're willing to literally charge us no tariff. We made a deal. We're close to making a deal with India. Others we met with, and we don't think we're going to be able to make a deal, so we just send them a letter. If you want to play ball, you have to. This is what you have to pay. So as far as I'm concerned, we're done. We're sending out letters to various countries, telling them how much tariffs they have to pay. Some will maybe adjust a little bit, depending if they have a cause. We're not going to be unfair about it. And actually, it's a small fraction compared to what we should be getting. We could be asking for much more, but for the sake of relationships that we've had with a lot of really good countries, we're doing the way I do it. India was the highest, or just about the highest tariff nation in the world, and one of the highest, 100 points, 150 points or percentages. So India was one of the highest in the world. They had won 175%, and higher than that. Negotiating right now, and it's also BRICS. They have BRICS, which is basically a group of countries that are anti the United States, and India is a member of that, if you can believe it. And it's an attack on the dollar, and we're not going to let anybody attack the dollar. So it's partially BRICS, and it's partially the trade situation. It's the deficit. We had a tremendous deficit. So, as you know, Prime Minister Modi is a friend of mine, but they don't do very much business in terms of business with us. They sell a lot to us, but we don't buy from them. You know why? Because the tariff is so high. They have one of the highest tariffs in the world. Now they're willing to cut it very substantially, but we'll see what happens. We're talking to India now. We'll see what happens. And it doesn't matter too much whether we have a deal or whether we charge them a certain tariff. But you'll know at the end of this week.
Well, I understand India no longer is going to be buying oil from Russia. That's what I heard. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's a good step. We'll see what happens, okay?
Let me go, please.
Indian officials have said that there are other countries that are buying Russian oil.
It's okay.
Like China, for instance,
it's
buys
okay.
more.
Yeah.
Why are you singling India out for these additional sanctions?
It's only been 8 hours. So let's see what happens over the next.
Sanctions.
You're going to see a lot more.
So this is a taste of
You're going to see a lot more. You're going to see so much secondary sanctions.
Follow up on the India tariffs. Do you expect increased trade negotiations, since you've announced the 50% tariff?
No, not until we get it resolved.
To follow up on the India tariffs, do you expect increased trade negotiations, since you've announced the 50% tariff?
No, not until we get it resolved.
And finally, India and the United States have agreed on that historic breakthrough after months of tensions, tough talks and intense negotiations. Effective immediately, US President Donald Trump has slashed tariffs on India to 18%. While Trump's social media posts say that this cut to 18% is from 25%, US Ambassador to India Sergio Gor confirmed that the additional 25% secondary tariffs on India purchasing Russian crude oil have also been eliminated. Now, this effectively means that Indian exports to the United States will now be taxed at 18% instead of 50%. Now, the development followed a phone call between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the US President Donald Trump late on Monday. So, let's see exactly what Trump posted on Truth Social. He said, first up, it was an honor to speak to Prime Minister Modi. Trump reiterated that Modi is one of his greatest friends and a powerful and respected leader of India. Trump also went on to claim that India had agreed to stop buying Russian oil and will buy much more from the United States and potentially even oil from Venezuela. Trump also says, as per Prime Minister Modi's request, effective immediately, tariff on India has been slashed to 18%. Now, Trump says, against this tariff concession, India will move towards reducing tariffs and non-tariff barriers on US goods to virtually zero. Remember, Trump had earlier labeled India as a tariff king. Trump also claims that Prime Minister Modi had committed to buy American as high as $500 billion worth of US energy, US technology, agriculture, coal and more. Finally, Trump said he and Prime Minister Modi are two people who get things done. Now, while we still await formal press releases and an official statement from the Indian side, Prime Minister Modi in his tweet thanked the US president for slashing tariffs but did not mention India cutting tariffs to zero or the $500 billion buy American products that Trump claims. Prime Minister Modi's tweet also refrained from mentioning any details on either stopping Russian oil purchases or buying Venezuelan oil. Now, remember, the US is India's largest export destination, accounting for nearly 20% of India's merchandise exports. Any disruption in access to the American market has major implications for Indian exports, jobs and growth. So, how did we get here and where is the road from here going forward? First up, it all began on April 2nd, 2025 when the US imposed a 26% reciprocal tariff on several Indian imports as part of Trump's global tariff push. Now, just days later, on April 10th, those tariffs were paused for 90 days, but a 10% duty on all imports stayed in place. By July 31st last year, the pressure intensified. Trump announced a 25% tariff on all Indian goods, warning of potential penalties if India continues to buy Russian oil. And then came the biggest shock on August 7th. Tariffs were hiked to a staggering 50%, the highest imposed on any US trade partner. After months of tough negotiations, the breakthrough finally came on February 2nd this year, with both sides agreeing to a deal that cuts tariffs to 18% and resets trade ties. Now, notably, this deal comes just a day after India presented its union budget, parts of which were aimed at easing the impact of Trump's tariffs, especially to Indian exporters from the MSME space. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is also in the US this week for a key ministerial meeting on critical minerals. Now, Trump's announcement follows India signing a major free trade agreement with the European Union that was seen as increasing pressure on Washington to close the deal. Now, remember, India has secured a relatively favorable US tariff rate of 18%, placing it better off than several Asian peers and competitors. Now, while the European Union, Japan and South Korea enjoy lowest tariff rates at just 15% each, India's rate is still lower than Indonesia and Pakistan, who are now taxed at 19% and well below Sri Lanka, Vietnam, Bangladesh as well as Taiwan, all of which face tariffs of 20%. Now, in contrast, China faces a significantly higher tariff rate of 34%, underlining India's comparatively stronger position in US trade terms despite not being among the lowest tariff economies. There are still some questions unanswered. What is it that India has agreed on? What are the kind of concessions that India has agreed on agriculture for one, and whether or not India has indeed agreed to cut tariffs on American imports to zero? And moreover, this entire question hangs large over India's purchase of Russian oil and potentially diversifying to Venezuelan oil. And for the stock markets, the biggest question is this going to be the turning point when we see foreign institutional investors and portfolio investors moving back to investing in India?